Another week, another bizarre Auburn game. Fortunately, Missouri is on the right side of it. Let's talk about all of it right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And you know what? Missouri just won, I think, as big of a game as it could possibly win. I know we could have won the Alabama game last week, beating the Crimson Tide for the first time in SEC history. But I'm just telling you, after losing that game last week, Missouri had to have this one, and they got it. As ugly and weird as it was, you know what? We're going to talk about it coming up here on Locked On Mizzou. And by the way, as I'm talking here live, I've realized I haven't gotten my graphic right here. So let's just zoom out. How about that? We'll just F off the graphic here for just a little bit. But you know what? First, I do want to remind you, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, well, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. And I'll tell you this, what a win for the Missouri Tigers. Overtime, I predicted 20-17. You know what? I think the Missouri should have actually gone for two with a few minutes left in the game, much like the opponents of the Denver Broncos did just a couple weeks ago. That was how I felt about the whole deal. But you know what, folks? I'm going to lean hard on you on the comments in this episode because, quite frankly, I'm a little bit shocked. I'm a little bit, I don't know, dismayed. What am I going to say about this game? This was a kind of a bizarre game to watch because in many ways, I thought Bo Prabula definitely played much better than he did against the Alabama game, especially in really difficult circumstances on the road in Jordan Hare Stadium. Also, Ahmad Hardy in the Missouri running game just never really got going. Hardy, 24 carries for 58 yards. Jamal Roberts, 3 for 6. If you'd have told me that before the game, I would have said, yeah, probably Missouri's going to lose this ball game. But the Tigers just end up hanging in there and playing a tough ball game. I got to give Prabula a lot of credit. I got to give Josh Manning, I think, a lot of credit. A guy that I was saying, hey, I think Donovan Olubade should get more time over Josh Manning right now. Well, guess what happened? Both young men had a really good ball game. I thought Josh Manning had his best game as a Missouri Tiger, but guess what? Donovan Olubade was excellent too. So that's a really good sign for Missouri going forward. A couple of young receivers in Josh Manning, who is a junior at this point. Of course, Olubade, a true freshman. You know, that's a really good sign for Missouri. I'll say that. Let's start to actually look at the comments here a little bit on this live edition of Locked On Mizzou. 5 heart attacks against an 0-3 SEC conference team, says Chris too crispy. So very on brand is that comment. I would have to agree. I had many a heart attack in this game and was just frankly happy to get away with any type of victory in this one. Auburn now 3-4 overall, 0-4 in the SEC. Missouri now 2-1 in the SEC. The difference between 2-1 and 0-4 could not be more massive, and I think this game has shown that. It just seems like the SEC is the new NFL right now. Gregory says I needed a beer after that one. I think I needed a few during it, to be quite honest with you, to get away with that. Gaming for Veterans says road SEC wins always feel good. I couldn't agree more with that. Especially the thing is, like, when you're looking at Auburn, Mississippi State, these teams that are apparently in the bottom half of the league. Heck, you saw Texas have a tough time with Kentucky here this week. There is nothing about this league that is easy. So obviously Missouri's going to have to go to Nashville next week against Vanderbilt, who just took down LSU, a team that at the 11th hour that I actually picked to win the SEC. I was on Georgia the entire offseason, but then decided, you know what, let's go LSU. I'm now regretting that pick. But regardless, Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, that is not an easy team to play whatsoever, especially with their 6'7". They're 6'7", 6'7". That's 6'7" tight end. I'm told this is the thing that kids are supposed to say now. But regardless, you know what? It was an incredible game. It really was, by Missouri. And you know what? Here's the thing. Let's get some more questions here. RTR, nice Missouri. Well, thank you, Alabama fans. I'm still mad we didn't run the ball 3 times in the first overtime. And according to another listener, what a gritty win. Offense needs work, but defense is right where they needed to be. And that's the thing. You know, the defense was mostly where it needed to be, I feel like. And, you know, after that first drive by Auburn, this is something I think a lot of football fans are starting to realize in the 2020s, is that first drive, that first scripted drive. It's great. It's fantastic. And a lot of times, hey, like Missouri against Alabama, you would go and drive the ball downfield, score a fairly easy touchdown, just like Auburn did against Missouri. But that doesn't mean everything's going to be easy from there on out, because, well, that's when teams start to get in their tablets and start to make adjustments. So I'll just say I thought Missouri's offense still has something to be desired, for sure. I think the Missouri offense was definitely stuck in the mud here, especially when the tailback running game, 24 carries, again for 58 yards for Ahmad Hardy. That's just not quite getting it done. Auburn is a really good front seven. I'll say that. They definitely stifled Georgia last week, so the competition is something to look at there. But that was a little bit disappointing, and frankly, I wanted Kirby Moore to be able to maybe counter whatever Auburn was doing defensively there to stuff that Missouri running game. Hey, maybe it was as simple as that the front four was blowing things up. I'll have to go back and look at the game, but otherwise, I have to say, I wanted to see more from that Missouri running game. I'll say that. And you know what? Speaking of that Missouri running game, speaking of this Missouri Tiger football team, got more to get to as the show goes along here. But first, I got to tell you, DoorDash, it's almost the weekend. In fact, it is the weekend. What am I talking about? We're right in the middle of the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP, who delivered, powered by DoorDash, just like you can deliver every Saturday with DoorDash streaks. Well, Damon Wilson delivered in overtime with a huge sack for Missouri that basically sealed the game. Well, just like Damon Wilson delivered, DoorDash is going to deliver your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season long, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. And also Supply House. Of course, if you're looking for HVAC, electrical, plumbing, any of that blue-collar kind of stuff, well, how about more than 280,000 different options? We're talking about 3D printer schematics where you can save yourself tons of time and money getting the perfect product and part that you need. So join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, low prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, folks, getting a little dry here. I got to be honest. I have been screaming and yelling during this entire Auburn game, and now I'm live here with a post-game Locked On Mizzou podcast. So forgive me here if if my voice is not up to your usual standards or mine for that matter. So what do we think about this game? First of all, number one, when we were late in the ball game, this is something that made me lose my voice, by the way. Why is Missouri throwing a lateral in the flat to the running back that if it's incomplete, it can go backwards? That it's now a live football. That's one of those things that drives me absolutely insane in modern spread offense where there's a lot of shotgun and of course the running back is next to you. Hey, running back, how about you take a yard or two forward before you go out into the flat? Actually get to the line of scrimmage, because running parallel to me, well, if that pass is now incomplete, you're no longer a security blanket. In fact, you're one of the most dangerous plays in football that exists. So that's all I'm going to say with that. Andy says run game needs to get their act together, and I have to say, you got to give Auburn, I think, a lot of credit. I think that's a really good Auburn rushing defense, at least based what I've seen. I'm not even basing this on any statistical analysis. But yeah, the Missouri rushing attack, I got to say, the offensive line, I can't really put I can't put much, if any, blame on Ahmad Hardy for this game, because it just felt like the yards before contact. Of course, Ahmad Hardy is the king of yards after contact. But at a certain point, if you're getting contacted at the line of scrimmage each and every time, well, that's a problem. And, well, I guess that's something that Missouri's going to have to look at going forward. Hopefully, maybe Auburn is maybe an elite rushing defense that we're going to have to face going forward here. Vandy versus Mizzou, going to be a good game. What a world, says Jack. Yeah, it's a totally new world. Not only is Vanderbilt in a top 20 type of game favored in Nashville, where half the crowd is LSU fans seemingly, well, they won that game. They won it relatively comfortably. By the way, my father-in-law was wondering why Diego Pavia took a knee before he could seemingly just run into the end zone there. Well, it was pretty simple, because they were going to hit the 2-minute warning. No timeouts left for LSU. That meant, well, take 3 knees, game's over. Simple as that. So, you know, if you thought Vanderbilt losing to Alabama a couple weeks ago meant that, well, this team isn't for real, I'm going to stop you right there, because Diego Pavia, to his own admission, forced a couple balls in the red zone that were bad passes. As he said, hey, the quarterback can't turn the ball over twice and expect to win in Bryant-Denny Stadium. But, you know, Missouri's going to have to win in the new Vanderbilt Stadium, and it's not going to be easy. Like Nick Saban said, he's having trouble on College Game Day. Nick Saban said, I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around the idea that Vanderbilt is no longer a pushover. We're there. I've wrapped my mind around it for sure. One of my everydayers here, P5 Cowdery, says it was ugly and difficult to watch. But watch I did. I love night games when I'm in the stadium, but I have night games to watch Mizzou on TV. Listen, you win any type of night game in the SEC in front of, 80,000+ people in Jordan-Hare Stadium, you got to give Missouri credit for that. I'm not saying it was always pretty. Missouri may have even played a C+, B+ type, B- type of game like it did even against the Crimson Tide last week. And yet that was kind of a must win. If you're going to make the playoff, if you're going to be in playoff contention, if you're going to build on the last couple years of double-digit wins at Missouri before really the schedule starts to get really hard in the 9-game SEC playoff, the 9-game SEC conference schedule era here, which starts next season, I think it's really critical that Missouri takes advantage of what's happening right here and right now. I've got a lot of people in the comments saying Donovan Olubide is great and needs to play more. Listen, I think the Missouri coaching staff is well aware of that, and people like Sean in the comments, I could not agree with you more there. One commenter says I aged 17 years. I think I only aged 17 months, but I definitely aged a little bit as well, no doubt about that. Auburn is the loudest in the SEC. Quality win. Mizzou's defense is the real deal. Clutch win in overtime. Definitely cannot argue with any of that. One commenter says Vandy is going to be scary. Of course, I agree with that. Another says the sort of game that Missouri used to lose. Now, this is a very interesting comment because that's absolutely right. In the pre-Drinkwitz era, in the era where Missouri was struggling, you know, it's interesting. I was listening to the commenters, the analysts, the play-by-play guy who were doing the Vanderbilt LSU game, and they were talking about how Clark Lee, Vanderbilt's coach, would say that there was just the sort of crust of losing around this entire program. Just the, I don't know, what am I trying to say? Just the crust, if you will. I can't think of a better term than that. But basically, they just had to shed that outer layer of skin that is just loserdom. Get rid of that epidermis, as it will, whatever it is. Just shed that off and grow a new skin that is the winning skin. Well, it seems like Vanderbilt has done that, and especially after beating LSU, a team that, again, the last hour of the offseason, I decided I think LSU is going to win the SEC. So the fact that Vanderbilt not only wins against the Bayou Bengals, they win comfortably in Nashville. If you're Missouri, don't think that is a scary thing, is a layup whatsoever. That is a scary place to go, and I think Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz is going to be well aware of that. One user says Missouri tried to give the game away. I'll just say this. If anything, gosh, Auburn and their place kicker may have given the game away, or at least kept the game alive for Missouri at the very least. Let's see, what other comments do we have? You know what? I'll tell you what. Here's my comment. Y'all got to stay with me for a little bit longer as we close out this show. But first, we're going to talk about Rougiette, because when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex, well, that's what we call confidence, pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette. Of course, you've heard of Viagra and Cialis. Heck, maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette. Go long. Get ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom. So head to RUGIET.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off your first order. That is RUGIET.com. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and make sure to use our code so that they know that we sent you. Easy for me to say. And of course, the NFL and college football seasons are here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So what do you guys think about that early first quarter challenge that ended up being, well, it seemed like Auburn was challenging an incompletion, an aggressive fourth down, just slightly in Auburn's own territory. Auburn throws it down the sidelines. Looked like the ball was obviously incomplete and out of bounds. But indeed, there was a pass interference called. Again, this was my brother-in-law actually brought this up and was like, "Hey, they actually called pass interference here, according to the game recap here." What in the world did I miss there? Did the referees actually call pass interference in the stadium? I thought that was a fairly bizarre moment, to be sure. But again, more comments here for all of you. John, Mizzou might have gotten Freeze fired. You know what? They might have. I have to say that. I teased that throughout the week. That was not something I thought about after the game. You never know. It is possible. That would seem a little bit unfair just based on this game alone. But in the bigger picture, maybe Hugh Freeze, supposedly an offensive guru, maybe he really does deserve to get fired. Another commenter says, hats off to the defense on this dub. And indeed, the defense did stiffen, especially in the second half, I would say. Hugh's hands were shaking on the final overtime. What was he? Was he going, hey, clapping? No, just kidding. Timeout. Okay, no, that's just a Kirby Smart thing. Andy says, Zion Young, dog, quite simply. Man, Zion Young was so good in that fourth quarter and overtime. I could not agree with you more. By the way, I predicted 20-17 Missouri victory. Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn predicted a Auburn 20-17 victory. So close. So freaking close. But you know, I'm going to take a slight I'm going to take a slight credit on that one. Mitch says more throws to Alubade. All he does is make plays. Couldn't agree with you more. Not only in the current sense for Alubade, does he need more action? Does he need more targets? Absolutely. But considering that he's a true freshman and that he has 2 more years of college football, presumably at Missouri, guys, boosters, open up your wallet for this guy to keep him around. But 2 more years of Alubade, this guy's a chance to be one of the best Missouri receivers we've seen in a long, long time. He is really, really impressive. I genuinely think he is that good. So, again, a guy who's come just out of high school here. Again, Jeremy Maclin, he was great as a freshman too. He at least had a year to watch and learn and all that good stuff. And, well, unfortunately, rehab from an ACL too. So Jeremy Maclin's a complete freak. I'm just saying the point here is that somebody like Donovan Alubade, who is looking this good as a true freshman, whoo, good stuff, man. Good stuff. He is really, really impressive. How good is Vandy's rush defense, says Cousin ZOU? Great question. I'll get to you there for sure. I've already got a crossover lined up with Corey Burton from Locked On Vandy, by the way. Man, he's got to be on cloud 9, by the way. This has got to be the greatest moment in Vanderbilt history, just about, I would say. Poor Drink thought we made the field goal in regulation in the first overtime. I'm so happy and relieved we won. Yeah, it's a tough angle from the sidelines, even field side, apparently. John says sometimes you have to set up the run with the pass on first down when teams are stacking a line on blitzing to stop Hardy. Quick hitters will demoralize a blitzing defense. And I'll just say to John's point there, I was really surprised that Missouri was not doing more wide receiver screens. And of course, it's funny not only when I watch Missouri, but when I watch all teams in the SEC that are maybe struggling to get going offensively, anytime there's a wide receiver screen that is not effective, especially if a block is missed, well, the offensive coordinator's an idiot, right? It can't be the blockers on the outside. They can't be the problem. But seriously, I mean, Missouri fans, all SEC fans, all fans of college football, NFL football, when the sideways passing isn't working, that's the easiest criticism in the world. But I have to say, when the down the field passing isn't working, when the run game isn't working, when it seems like Auburn is committing a lot of men to the line of scrimmage, that does seem like the time when a wide receiver screen would have been useful. That's just a thought there from me. You know, I haven't completely thought it through or broken down the film or anything like that, but that's just how I felt about that. But you know what? Hey, thanks to all of you for joining the live chat here. Thanks to all of you for listening to Locked On Mizzou. As always, as you can all tell, well, it's a little bit late here. It's 11:30 almost on a Saturday night here. So this is probably not my best performance, but thanks to all of you for being patient and joining me anyway. And for the Locked On Podcast Network, it is your team every day.